key advisors, driving real dealership profit. Our last episode, episode 5, we had started talking about obsolescence. So today in episode 6, we're going to continue that conversation. And of course, as always, I'm Jeremy.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll be hosting this episode for you. Now, in our last episode, we talked about obsolescence, the math, fact, and logic behind it, the fact that your business is not different depending on whether it's automotive, truck, trailer, heavy equipment. The math, fact, and logic applies to all those industries across the board. And we said that we never want to see you throw obsolescence away. Okay? We always want you to make money with your inventory. That's the purpose of inventory, is to sell. So today we want to dive in a little bit to how we prevent obso from happening. And it breaks down into basically 3 separate categories. And again, this is math and facts. This isn't my personal opinion. This isn't something that Chris thought of. These are actual math and facts that have been proven out through 30 plus years in the industry, 400 different dealer groups that we've worked with. These are facts. 50% of our obsolete inventory comes from special order parts. 30% of the obsolete inventory comes from parts that are returned from independent garages, body shops, and about 20% of our obso inventory comes from incorrect parts being ordered. And Chris, would you like to go a little deeper into that, break that down a little further for us?
Yeah, perfect. So when you said 50% of obsolete inventory comes from special ordered parts, well, what's a special ordered part? Special order parts is anything that does not meet our stocking criteria. So it could be a non-stock, watched part. And when you think about it, it makes sense from logic using that terminology. When we have a part that we don't stock, why would we bring it in and just put it on the shelf? Whatever the reason, whether the customer didn't pick it up. And I think that's one of those tricky situations or trick bags that everybody falls into, that I'll sell it later. Someone will come in for it. It's a hassle to do a return. But that's where we run into the problem, right? So if we know half of all of our obsolescence comes from those special order parts, if we take that logic and say, you know what, this is the first time I've ever had a demand for it, I don't want this. I have such a low probability of ever being able to sell that part again. And I know that for every day, second that I hold that part, the dollar amount or value of that part just keeps going up and up and up. So that is where, when we talk about it, getting rid of it, send it back immediately. That is in our control. And if we can't, that's where we have to go into not crisis mode, but I'll call it crisis mode. We need to look, are we part of another group? Is there another location that sold that part before? Can they use it? Can I send it to them? Don't just send it without asking. But if we start getting very diligent, looking at that right in that moment and not just putting it on the shelf and forgetting about it, that's where we get ahead of the game. Now, the next piece you said is that 30%, which is, wholesale, shop returns. The same logic, as we like to say, facts, data, logic, math, all those things go together. Same thing. If it's a body shop that's constantly returning parts, why? Is that something we can do to make that process better, to prevent it? And that last 20%, I'm going to make it real easy. Those are our mistakes. That means we either looked it up incorrectly. So is it a training issue for us? Those are all things that break up how 100% of those obsolete parts get on our shelf. And we can do something about it if we do it in the moment, not wait.
Right. And that, going back to 50% of the obsolete comes from special order parts. And when we think of special order parts, there's a lot of different categories in special order parts. Okay. We have multi-packs. When we order, we need a nut or a bolt or a screw or a length of wire or a hose, and we only need a couple of them. But the package comes in a pack of 25, 50, or 100. What we're seeing a lot of dealers doing is taking and purchasing that package, selling the 2 or 3 that they need out of the package, and then putting out the other 97 or 98 on their shelf. And it just sits there and it becomes obsolete inventory. We have electrical parts. Maybe we have an ECM or a brake module that needs to be programmed. We order that part, it's programmed. It's an electrical part. We cannot return that part. We have parts that are non-returnable from our OEMs, from our vendors. And again, if a part is non-stock, and there's different terminology and the different computer systems that everybody runs, because there's a lot of them out there, whether it's a non-stock, whether it's a watch part, whether it's, non-stocking, the point is that part should not be in your inventory. So how do we prevent that from happening? Or when a customer, a shop, body shop, a wholesaler, when they return parts that they didn't use, or when you order parts that are incorrect, how do we keep those parts from ending up on our shelf and eventually becoming obsolete inventory? How do we do that? What are some of the steps we take?
Yeah, no, it's huge. To the point, Jeremy, when you talked about multi-packs, and I'd like to expand on that just a little bit more. When we think about the obsolete parts and the damage of multi-packs, and you'll see multi-packs are a big, big, big offender. We are not speaking to the multi-packs that are considered stocking. These are only your multi-packs that are one-offs you've never ordered before, or they don't meet your criteria to have on the shelf. We talk about wins and losses. If I have to buy 50 of a part, but I only sell 2, is that a win or is that a loss? Now, if you mark up the 2 to pay for the whole pack, I would call that a win. And I'm not recommending you do that, but somebody out there, I'm sure, has. But in reality, that's where you have to look at it. We want to make sure we're helping our customers, making them successful, decreasing their downtime. But we really have got to look too at who signs our checks every 2 weeks, and are we helping them and our company? It's a full circle process, and obsolescence really hurts. It's one-sided. Doesn't hurt the customer. It hurts us.
Right. Again, we hear all the different quote unquote reasons why, but again, they're not valid. Oh, this is a good customer. I have to take care of my customer. If I don't do this, they're not going to be my customer. We've heard them all throughout the years. But the way we stop obsolescence from coming into our inventory to begin with is setting up what we like to refer to as guardrails. Okay, we have these guardrails that if we stay inside the guardrails, we don't have this obsolescence growing. Now, in our business, and we always have to preface this, we always have to talk about this. In our business, you're always going to have that special customer, that special client where none of the rules apply because they're your special customer. And it happens. And sometimes it's a business decision that we make that we're going to absorb the cost of this to make the customer happy. We get that. We understand that and we know it happens. But for the 90%, 95% of the time that it's normal, everyday business, we have to have those guardrails in place. And when we think about those guardrails, we have to think about what is our policy and procedure as far as cash customers. Customers that come in that we've never seen before, we've never done business before, and they want to order that special order part They want to order that non-returnable part, they want to order the electrical part, or they want to order that multi-pack. What are the guardrails we have in place? Do we have guardrails? Do we have a policy and procedure that says that, Mr. Customer, this is a special order item. I cannot return it. Therefore, I need you to pay for this in full upfront before I order it. Because once I order it, it's yours. I can't return it. Same thing with the electrical, multi-packs, anything like that. What is our policy for cash customers? Then what is our policy for customers that have an account with us? Do we have something on our counter tickets in our shops that lays out what we have as far as a policy with those parts? How do we protect ourselves? And when I say ourselves, I'm talking about the business, the dealer principal, the owners, our bank account. How do we protect ourselves from that return ending up on our shelf costing us money?
Well, and to your point, we need to have those protections, but also we need to protect our customer. And you might say, well, how do we do that? Why do they need protection? Not only do we need to have our policy for those special order parts, but I love, and I'm a huge fan of this, on that invoice where they prepay for the part, it should stay, this part is non-returnable, special order, clearly labeled in black and white. And because now not only are you protecting your side, the dealership side, but you're protecting the customer too, that, hey, we verified everything, we looked it up right, and now there's a problem. The customer's not liable if there's a problem. But if we did everything correctly, the customer knows clearly in big, nice, bold letters that, hey, this part is not returnable. You don't have to go back. Whereas if we don't mention it or it's in very fine print on that invoice or ticket, now potentially you can go into that customer satisfaction issue where they're going to get angry and upset. But if it is clearly labeled, you take that additional step, explain it, make sure they understand, not trying to talk them out of buying the part, but you just want to understand, hey, we can't send this back. It's much easier if there is a problem down the line that the customer understands and it doesn't ever get to a point where it could be challenging. Let's just say that. So, that's that big piece of really just spelling it out. I'm a huge fan of it.
And a lot of that has to do with our internal training, because much like anybody that has ever purchased a home or purchased a vehicle, do you honestly sit there and read through every last word of that contract before you sign it? Most of us don't. And that's the problem with having policies and procedures. If we have a little blurb at the bottom of our invoice or ticket or RO or shop ticket, it doesn't mean the customer reads it. If we have something on the invoice, it doesn't mean the customer reads it. But if we are training our people to have those conversations up front, those conversations up front are very easy to have. They're very difficult to have after the fact when it happens. And the other thing that we really teach on is when you get that person that comes to your counter and he's ordering that special order part and you have that conversation, you tell him, Mr. Customer, this is a special order. Are you sure you want to order this? I cannot return it. You have to pay for it in full up front. I'm going to order this in. And when that customer has that overreaction where he's just throwing a fit and cussing and yelling and hollering because he doesn't want to pay for that, that's your red flag. Don't order the part. He's not actually coming back for it. He doesn't actually need it. Or he wants to be 100% covered in case it's the wrong part and he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yep.
Any logical, reasonable person is going to understand what a non-returnable part is. And they're going to accept the responsibility and they're going to order. I always like to flip it back on the customer and say, well, when you have that unreasonable person and they're acting that way. So wait a minute, let me get this clear. You want me to absorb all the cost, all the risks, everything with ordering this part because you don't want to. How is that fair? How is that equitable? Nobody would do that in their personal life. Why would you do that in the company you work for? So when we set these guardrails up, it's very important that we take the time to, number one, train our employees to have these conversations up front. But then number two, train our employees to train our customers. These are certain things we put in place. It's just like when you purchase something on Amazon. You've got to pay for it up front. You've got to hit that button that says purchase. Nobody's going to go into a department store and special order something and not pay for it. These are things that we have to set in place, and we have to make sure that we're following our policies and procedures if we're going to protect ourselves from absorbing the cost of this obsolete inventory down the road.
Well, and just something too, a little bit more. We've got to empower our people. And if I'm a counter person, I've got to feel empowered to be able to enforce or feel confident about our special order parts policy. If I'm a parts manager, I want to make sure all of my people feel confident that this is who we are and that. And one way we go about doing that is not only is that policy printed in fine print on our invoice, but it's also posted in plain public view where a customer can stand there as they're talking to you and see that policy.
Right.
So it helps empower our people to not get in a fight. That's not what this is about, or stand up, but empower them to say, Mr. Customer, this is our policy, as you can see posted right behind my shoulder here. So by doing these things, this helps us in our prevention of these special order parts, which we now know is half of all of our makeup of our obsolescence from ever getting to that point. Those are things we can do in our control to prevent it.
Right, right. And so the other half of that obsolescence falls into, either 30% are coming back from our body shops or service shops that we sell to, and about 20% is errors that we make, whether it's internally in our shop or whether it's at our counter, we've made the error. So all of this together, if we do have these parts that we do get in and we do have in our possession, the other guardrails we need to set up is, what do we do with them? Do we just take and put them on the shelf and say, oh, well, cost of doing business? No. Every single OEM that we deal with, and whether, again, automotive, heavy duty, truck, trailer, heavy equipment, they all have policies in place. If you get a wrong part in or order a wrong part, usually have a window where you can return that part. Now, again, with the guardrails we put up, there may be restock fees. We may have to pay freight to ship it back. So are we charging those charges to a customer if it was a customer's fault? Obviously, if it's our fault, we need to eat those internally. But when we think about it in the grand scheme of things, if we have $100 part that we ordered in that was a special order part, or that was ordered by a customer that was wrong, or ordered by one of our people that was wrong, that's $100 part that's on our shelf. So if I keep that part and I hold on to that part, as we've talked about in the previous podcast, we'll talk about more in this one, there is a cost of carrying that part. So if I have to pay a 15% restock fee, or if I have to pay freight to send that part back, I'm still much, much better off doing that than sitting on that part, letting it become obsolete, letting it sit on my shelf and gather dust because it's not making money for me. At least within that window, I can recoup 75, 80, 85% of the cost of that part, I can recoup. I can get that back. If I wait and that part turns into obsolescence, and we'll probably talk about it in the next podcast, what we do
Yes.
once it hits that obsolescence and what we do to get rid of it. If I can't get rid of that part and I do eventually have to write it off or eat it, or it just becomes so old it's just literally falling apart on my shelf, that part has cost me a lot more than $100. So that window from the OEMs is set up, and we need to make sure we're taking advantage of that by sending those parts back immediately when we identify them. And I know we go through some of the ways of identifying them. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
So the way we actually can and identify, and we're just about out of time for this week. Sorry. Just thought I would throw that out there. So we
Man, it
might
goes
need
quick,
to,
doesn't it?
yes, we might need to pause here and continue on because this is going to be a multi-part podcast. So hold that thought, Jeremy. I'm just going to say we'll stop it here for this one. We'll call it a cliffhanger. So we'll pick this up on our next one. But I really wanted to thank you all for joining us today. And just remember, the Heavy Duty Hub podcast is powered by Key Advisors, driving real dealership profit. And we are an open book. So if you have any questions, concerns, comments, topics you want for us to discuss, you can reach us at, let's see here, the Heavy Duty Hub, or excuse me, the Heavy Duty Pod at gmail.com. That's the Heavy Duty Pod at gmail.com. Or you can visit our website at the heavydutyhub.net, or excuse me, heavydutyhub.net. And as always, Key Advisors, you can reach us at keyadvisors.com or email us at info@keyadvisors.com. Well, that is the end of episode 6. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Chris.
And I'm Jeremy.
Like and subscribe. We'll see you on the next one. Thank you.